5 minutes of questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Gladstein, will you tell me the organizations that pose on the domestic side, two of the organizations, number one, number two, threat to the homeland at this point?
So let's talk about this tense exchange between Congressman Bennie Thompson and DHS Secretary Kristi Noem.
Can you please clarify, like, organizations?
Any domestic terrorist organization that poses a threat to the homeland as we speak.
I'd say the first one, President Trump had just announced executive order domestic terrorist organization, Antifa. That's our primary concern right now.
All right, that's what President Trump did. What does the FBI say?
We share the same view. When you look at the data right now, you look at the domestic terrorist threat that we're facing. Right now, what I see from my position is that's the most immediate violent threat that we're facing on the domestic side.
So where is Antifa headquartered?
What we're doing right now with the organization.
Where in the United States does Antifa exist? Yeah. If it's a terrorist organization and you've identified it as number one.
We are building out the infrastructure right now.
So what does that mean? We're trying to get the information. You say Antifa is a terrorist organization. Tell us as a committee, how did you come to that? Where do they exist? How many members do they have in the United States as of right now?
Well, that's very fluid. It's ongoing for us to understand that. The same, no different than Al-Qaeda and ISIS.
No, I don't want you. I'll ask one question, sir. I just want you to tell us. If you said Antifa is the number one domestic terrorist organization operating in the United States, I just need to know where they are, how many people. I don't want a name. I don't want anything like that. Just how many people have you identified with the FBI that Antifa is made of?
Well, the investigations are active.
So you wouldn't come to this committee and say something you can't prove, I know. I know you wouldn't do that. But you did. Madam Secretary, you and the gentleman from NCTC reference the unfortunate accident that occurred with the National Guardsman being killed.
You think that was an unfortunate accident?
I mean,
it was a terrorist attack.
Wait. Look, I'll get it straight. Then you can
He shot our National Guardsman in the head.
Look, Mr. Chairman, will you direct the witness to allow me to ask my question? It was an unfortunate situation, but you blamed it solely on Joe Biden. I want you to know who approved the asylum application for this same person.
Mr. Thompson, this individual that came into the country.
No, I want to know who approved.
Congressman Thompson, I want you to understand when this individual came into the country, he came under evacuation of Afghanistan under Operation Allies Welcome, was thoroughly vetted by the Biden administration at that point in time, allowed into our country, and then was never followed up. I want to remind everybody in Congress.
Reclaim my time.
We follow the law. And every asylum is supposed to have a check-in every single year, and the Biden administration failed to do that. They vetted this individual, allowed them into our country, and did not do due diligence.
Witness will allow the gentleman to ask his question.
Yes or no? Who approved the asylum claim?
The application on the asylum was thoroughly filled out by information that was gathered by the Biden administration.
So the Biden administration approved the asylum.
The asylum application was put into place under the rules established by the Biden administration.
Reclaiming my time. I don't want to file perjury charges against you, but I'm of the opinion that the Trump administration, DHS, your DHS, approved the asylum application.
The asylum application moved forward under all of the information and vetting processes that were put in place under the Biden administration, which is when vetting happened. And that's what President Trump has changed. under President Trump's administration.
Claim my time again.
When
it's obvious you don't want to answer the question. Mr. Kent, do you want a shot at it?
The individual was vetted to serve as a soldier in Afghanistan, and that vetting standard was used by the Biden administration as a ruse to bring him here. Had we followed the standard operating procedures for special immigrant visas, that individual and none of the allies welcome people would have come to America. That's on Joe Biden.
Gentlemen's time has expired.
That was the answer.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. That was a murder that took place in D.C. It was not an unfortunate incident. And those comments are effing disrespectful.
Who is it?
I expect better from the
It's not a valid point of order.
The reason this exchange matters so much is because it pulls back the curtain on how fragile our national security conversations have become when they're filtered through pure politics instead of grounded governance. What we saw in this hearing wasn't just a disagreement over policy, it was a breakdown in definition, responsibility, and transparency. Congressman Thompson wasn't asking for classified intelligence. He wasn't asking for names, addresses, or operational details. He was asking for the bare minimum required for Congress to do its job: clarity. If you're going to label something the #1 domestic terrorist threat in the United States, you have to be able to explain what that threat actually is. Otherwise, the term terrorism loses its meaning and becomes just another political weapon. And that's a dangerous road to go down. When terrorism is loosely defined, it can be stretched to fit almost anything or anyone. That doesn't just weaken civil liberties, it weakens real counterterrorism work. Law enforcement can't effectively track threats that aren't clearly structured. Policymakers can't write smart legislation based on slogans, and the public can't trust warnings that aren't backed by verifiable facts. The same problem shows up again when the conversation turns to asylum and immigration. Instead of a clear explanation of how the system failed, we get a blame relay race between administrations. Biden did this. Trump changed that. Obama set this rule. Someone else missed a check-in. And somewhere in the middle of all that finger-pointing, a violent act happened that cost a National Guardsman his life. That loss deserves more than political deflection. What Thompson was pushing for, again and again, was acknowledgement. Not spin, not reinterpretation, not bureaucratic fog, just ownership. Because when every failure is blamed on the previous administration, accountability disappears entirely. Government becomes a permanent campaign instead of a functioning institution. And let's be honest, most Americans watching this don't care which administration gets blamed nearly as much as they care about whether the system actually works. They want to know that threats are being accurately identified, that asylum processes are enforced consistently, and that when mistakes happen, someone is willing to say, "This failed, and here's how we fix it." Instead, what they saw was evasiveness. They saw basic questions met with roundabout answers. They saw a cabinet secretary who clearly didn't want to give a definitive response because definitive responses come with consequences. That's why hearings like this leave people frustrated. Because Congress is supposed to be the place where the executive branch gets challenged, not shielded. It's where claims are tested, not repeated. And when officials can't or won't answer straightforward questions under oath, it raises a bigger question about how much confidence we should have in the policies being rolled out behind the scenes. At the end of the day, this wasn't a viral moment. It was a warning sign. A warning about what happens when ideology outruns evidence. A warning about how easily serious issues like terrorism and immigration can be reduced to partisan talking points. And a warning about how accountability slowly erodes when no one is willing to draw a straight line from decision to outcome. If we actually want a safer country, one that takes domestic extremism seriously, enforces immigration law responsibly, and honors the lives of those lost, we need less deflection and more precision. Less posturing and more honesty. Less political theater and more governing. That's what this exchange exposed, and that's why it matters. If you made it this far, hit like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments.